When we have teams come here to play, it's day at the Hall of Fame. Play your game because that's important. Get some lunch. We'll cook a barbecue for them. But then you're coming in the museum and learning some baseball history.
That was Scott Crawford of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. Hello and welcome to episode 134 of the Irish Baseball Podcast. I'm your host, Rick Becker. Scott will be my guest on the show today. We'll be talking about a number of topics related to Canadian baseball, from the Blue Jays American League Championship in 2025, Team Canada's chances in the upcoming World Baseball Classic, and the recent Netflix documentary about the Montreal Expos. If you're a member of the Irish American Baseball Society, make sure that you're keeping up to date with everything that's happening with the organization by heading to the Community Network website. This is always a great way to find out more about the Irish Wolfhounds Baseball Club, the Irish American Baseball Hall of Fame, or just to discuss baseball in Ireland with other people who love those topics. If you aren't a member yet, consider joining today. Head to irishbaseball.org for more information. Let's get started with our main conversation. Thanks for joining us, Scott.
Hey, no problem, Rick. It's great talking baseball with you.
Scott is here actually for the second time on the show, and he is at the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame, and there is just a lot going on with Canadian baseball right now, so I thought this was a good time to have him back on the show.
Yeah, it's always Canadian baseball is thriving and exciting, and we obviously had a great year with the Blue Jays and a lot of young Canadians coming up, and yeah, let's chat about it.
Let's start there, right? The Blue Jays had an amazing year, American League champions, about, 6 inches away from being World Series champions. Obviously, we've had a lot of discussions on our message boards about whether the runner left early enough, but we don't even have to get into that stuff. Let's talk about the excitement that surrounded the Blue Jays and their run to the World Series in 2025.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it wasn't expected. If you think back to 2024, the Jays finished in last place, and there was a lot of struggles and a lot of people upset, and and not knowing really what 2025 was bring. And spring training was okay. I mean, Springer had a terrible spring training. And so everyone was like, well, what are we going to do with George? He's got 2 years left in his contract. And then surprise, surprise, George was the third best hitter in all of baseball this year if you go by OPS. So, only Judge and Ohtani were better than him. So that came out of nowhere, which was great to see. And just other players, having him and Bo Bichette back, I mean, that's like two players that didn't have in 2024, basically. And when you throw those two in the middle of your order, you're definitely winning more games.
And I think one of the things you just can't ignore is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I think even Dodger fans felt a little bad for him at the end of that series because he just gave absolutely everything. He hit, he played amazing defense at first base. He was just all over the place in that series, and that's the guy that the Blue Jays inked to a big contract. That's the guy that the Blue Jays said, all right, this is our future. And he's living up to that contract right now.
Yeah, I mean, they gave him $500 million, the third biggest contract in baseball history. So he has a lot to live up to. I think he'll do it. He's a great hitter. He hit a good regular season. It wasn't like fantastic 2021 or 2024, but it was still really good. Yeah, he went in the playoffs and he hit the lights out. I mean, he hit more home runs than he had strikeouts in the playoffs. But the playoffs are really a good team game. I mean, Ernie Clement set the playoff hits record, not Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So it just shows how great Vladdy was. There was even players that that played better as Clement, and then Barger had key hits. And it's one of those things where those guys were there last year, but something just clicked this year, and they played well together. You hear all the talks about the clubhouse, so the clubhouse worked well together. They got a new hitting coach this year, and obviously they became the #1 team in baseball for batting average. So that just showed that a lot of people turn things around, and Vladdy's definitely a leader. He's got the biggest contract in the Jays clubhouse. He's the face of the franchise, so people definitely there's a lot of pressure on him to go for 14 more years with that contract.
Another guy who had a really great postseason, a really great regular season, even is Alejandro Kirk. And then he ends up being the guy who grounds into the double play to end the World Series. So he ends up having this really awful memory to cap things off for him, but he really should be proud of how he played. And when a series is that close, it goes to a game 7. Game 7 goes into 11 innings. Somebody's going to be the one to make a mistake, and you can't hang your entire season on that. He played one heck of a series, and for a guy who doesn't necessarily look like the quintessential athlete, he is somebody who played one heck of a 2025.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I should have included him in the Springer talk because again, 2024 was a rough year for Kirk hitting wise. He missed a lot of spring training, I believe, that year. 2025, again, he turned it around. He was a 280 hitter, I believe, didn't strike out, always made contact. And yeah, I mean, he grounded, everyone remembers how he grounded in the double play to end the World Series, but without Kurt leading that pitching staff, without Kurt hitting 280 and getting on base and not striking out, making contact, it's so important to make contact. No one makes contact anymore in the game. Everyone strikes out all the time. And so for a fellow like Kirk, it's really important. And he played almost every day. He was, catchers don't play every day, but he played a lot. And yeah, I mean, you definitely can't put it down to one at bat in the bottom of the 11s in the World Series. I mean, everyone is. I mean, if he got the hit, he'd be on on top of the CN Tower with excitement. Everyone would be holding him up on his shoulders. But unfortunately, he didn't get a hit. But without him all season in the playoffs, they wouldn't have been in Game 7 of the World Series without Kirk.
What has the excitement done to Canadian baseball? Because I would imagine, you deal a lot with youth baseball and things like that. So if you have a team make a run like that, it has to be inspiring the young kids. Maybe every once in a while in June and July, they put down the hockey stick and pick up a glove. They're out there in the backyard, and this time they're not the hockey player. This time they're Vlad when they're taking their swings, or they're, Kirk or Springer or whoever. They have some more role models, and last place in 2024, first place World Series trip in 2025. I have to imagine that it's creating a new electricity.
Oh, definitely it is. And it happened 10 years ago as well in 2015, 2016 with Batista and Tulo and Russell Martin and Josh Donaldson and Ari Dickey and on and on and on about all the players that got then. If all the 10, 12, 13-year-old kids 10 years ago, and now take a look at all the Canadians in AA, AAA, and the big leagues. You got Owen Casey, Jonah Tong, Liam Hicks, on and on and on about all these guys, Bo Naylor. But all these young guys, 20 to 25 years old, that 10 years ago, they fell in love with the game with Jose Batista hitting his bat flip and Josh Donaldson winning the MVP and Russell Martin, a Canadian, catching for the Blue Jays. Imagine that. I mean, that would have been so cool for kids to watch. And so I think the same thing is going to happen. I mean, they have, they brought excitement back. I always like to say it was cool to wear a Blue Jay t-shirt to school. My wife works in a public school here in town, and kids were talking baseball in the hallways, and that didn't happen in 2024, right? So I mean, kids are excited. I expect registration will go up in 2026 all over the country, and again, like, kids will be asking for Blue Jay t-shirts. That's exactly what the Blue Jays want, because those 10 and 12-year-old kids are the future of the game, and we need it here, and the Blue Jays need it there, and Baseball Canada and Baseball Ontario and everywhere across the country needs the Blue Jays to do well because it helps all of us.
Coming off of the World Series run, and now we have the World Baseball Classic coming up again, do you think that the momentum created from the Blue Jays going into having a Team Canada taking the field is going to help to continue that momentum for Canadian baseball?
I think so. Again, our team is so young. I mean, we had the veterans and called Josh Naylor a veteran. He's only 28, I think, but he's kind of a veteran. And you got his younger brother catching, and Liam Hicks catching with Miami, was a rookie who played 130 games with Miami this year. Again, you got the bullpen: Cade Smith, Eric Zabrowski, Matt Brash. Is the guys who are just lights out if you look at their stats the last couple of years, and then you got the veterans like Romano, hopefully can bounce back from his sore arm. But yeah, no, our WBC roster could be fantastic. I mean, if you look at the hitters from Naylor and Tyler O'Neill, and you got Otto Lopez in the middle, Charles LeBlanc. Again, I'm going to forget some names, of course, as we go down this list because there's so many of them. Denzel Clark in center field. I mean, you saw what he did with the Athletics in just 30 or 40 games this year before he got hurt. I mean, he's like a Spider-Man climbing the walls and with the Athletics. And so our roster is assuming people can play. I mean, there's all kinds of rules why you can play, you can't play, injuries, insurance. So there's all kinds of stuff that limits some players from playing. But if we get our full roster, or majority of our roster, those other countries are going to have their hands full when they play Canada.
I think that here in the States, the World Baseball Classic took a couple rounds until it really caught on here. And I think that one of the things about that is, we're Americans, we're kind of arrogant, and we didn't even go to the finals the first couple years, or we didn't have a lot of success, at least in the early couple WBC. But now it has sort of gotten its foothold in the States. Has it been popular the entire time in Canada, or has it sort of had that slow build like it has here in the US, where, maybe 2006, it wasn't the biggest deal, but now as we keep going and Canadian baseball keeps getting stronger, that now it is having a bigger impact?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always been popular, right back to when we beat the Americans in 2006 in WBC, right? Adam Stern was a all-star that game. Robin catches in the outfield, hit inside the park home runs. But we never got out of the first round of the WBC, which has always obviously been disappointing. We've been tied, and then there's been a tiebreaker that didn't advance us. That's sort of our unluckiness with WBC so far. But again, I think it's definitely popular here because again, it's baseball in Canada, which is extremely popular and growing every year. And you look at all the young talent we have. It's just, and they're flashy and they're good and they're starting. They're not the 25th man on the roster on some team. They're in the starting nine, and there's more and more of those guys playing. Like, I'm so excited. Owen Casey will hopefully finally get his chance with the Cubs. Owen Casey is just a monster of a hitter. You see what he's done in AAA the last couple of years, and hopefully he's playing right field in WBC for us. That would be super. But he's also, I want to see him in right field for 150 games with the Cubs this summer too. So, the talent's there, the excitement is there, and we're pretty excited.
When we talk about the momentum of Canadian baseball, and we talk about the fact that it's getting more and more popular in Canada each and every year. And recently there was a documentary, a really well done documentary about the Montreal Expos, talking about how the Montreal Expos ended up having to leave, ended up as the Washington Nationals. And now, as we look back on that, all these years later, and the timing of the documentary was almost immaculate because the Blue Jays were making this World Series run, and you were showing how much the country loves the game of baseball. Plus, Major League Baseball is getting ready for expansion. I think Nashville, Portland, Salt Lake City, I think these places have the lead when it comes to maybe getting expansion teams. But what were your thoughts on the Expos documentary? And then what are your thoughts about the possibility that within the next 10, 15 years, we might see Major League Baseball back in Montreal?
Yeah, well, first off, the documentary by Netflix was amazing. We knew it would be. We weren't involved too much in it. They did ask us a couple odd questions along the way just to verify a few things, and we were glad to help them. But it was a sad documentary because you knew the outcome, right? I mean, and that's what documentaries are. It tells a story about what actually happened, and but it was fascinating to watch. It was fascinating to see the people that got interviewed. I mean, they had the best, the best. They had Walker, Guerrero, Pedro, on and on and on about who was interviewed in this documentary, and you could tell like when you get the big names to talk to you, it's very valuable and can be rare sometimes. So that was great to see those guys. And, it was, again, being here, we knew most of the history and whatnot, but, I'm glad they made the documentary because it really, brought the Expos back into the news. Not that the Expos necessarily need that. I mean, they're in our world, they're talked about every single day, even though they've been gone 21 seasons. But and people walk in the door and they want to talk the Expos still, and along with the Blue Jays and the Canadians that play baseball, but the Expos are still, a favorite by a ton of people to walk in this museum. And them coming back, I definitely agree with you. I think those cities in the States have the upper hand currently that you had mentioned. I always want to see more baseball in Canada, so I'd be 100% on board with another team in Canada. I think it's definitely a long ways off. It's going to happen just because those teams in the States sort of seem to be the front runners. But Montreal, I mean, it had a team. It needs a new stadium. It seems to have a lot of backers that can get a new stadium to it. I always say, like, why can't they come back? I mean, the Expos moved to Washington, and that was Washington's third Major League Baseball team in the history of baseball. So they'd already lost their team twice, and they still got another team. So, they got three chances. I always say, why not another chance in Montreal? And my fingers are always crossed. And anytime we hear something about it, it's great. I mean, they had their uh, talk a few years ago with Major League Baseball in Tampa Bay, which obviously was declined by Major League Baseball to sort of split the season, play half down there and half up here. So it sort of have to start a whole new plan over again, and that takes, like I said, it takes time because you're talking billions of dollars in Major League Baseball and unions and all that stuff. So it's not something that's done in a year or two. It's definitely a 5 to 10 year plan that you need to put in place and get organized.
What did you think about that half year plan with Tampa Bay? It felt to me like if you're going to ask a city like Montreal to invest the money, whether it be public funding, whether it be private funding, if you're going to ask a city and a fan base to put up that money, it really feels like half a season isn't enough to make it worth that. I feel like if they're going to bring baseball back to Montreal, and if you look at the history, almost every city, unless they had another Major League Baseball team in the city like Philadelphia or St. Louis, if you lost your team, Major League Baseball has given you another chance. Basically, everybody who lost a team, from Seattle having a team for 1 year that left from Milwaukee, and then they got a team back, and Kansas City lost the A's, and then Kansas City got a team a little later. So I think the opportunity will be there eventually, but for that much of an investment, I would think you would need a full season team.
I agree. Obviously, a full season is best. The split season was because there was things going on in Tampa Bay, which again I don't know what's going on in Tampa Bay, but I just heard what was in the news. The new stadium and well, no fans. We can all see that there's very few fans go to Tampa Bay. They want a new stadium. That was on and off again, and so I mean the Montreal people were just trying to jump in and sort of solve the problem and get some baseball here. I think the fact that they wanted to half a season, it would cause a lot of complications and moving and whatnot. But I think it was a way to show Major League Baseball that Montreal could have a team again, and maybe starting by like, well, let's just do half a season and show you how great we are and sort of show you that we told you we could do it because we know we could do it. and that would have been a start to it, and then move on from there. But again, Major League Baseball has final say, and they said that idea wasn't in their approvals. So I mean that sort of scrapped that idea, and now things have quieted down, and but you never know who's working in the back office or the back rooms with new ideas, and I'm for any more baseball in Canada, professional, amateur, affiliated, non-affiliated, with Major League Baseball is a great thing for Canada.
And one of the things about that Netflix documentary that I think flew a little bit under the radar is they had interviews with Major League Baseball network personalities in the MLB network studios. Major League Baseball played a part, at least by allowing their people to be used for this documentary. And that's not necessarily an endorsement of baseball in Montreal, but it's not a shunning either. I think the fact that MLB Network played such a big part in that documentary says something about how Major League Baseball feels about the city of Montreal, and maybe that baseball could be a possibility at some point in maybe not the near future, but in the future.
I definitely think so. Again, because they had a team from 1969 to 2004. They had a lot of successful years, and they had some down years as well, as we all know. And obviously, they eventually left. They were owned by Major League Baseball the last couple of years, and played some games in Puerto Rico, and then moved to Washington after the '04 season. So I definitely think Montreal's in Major League Baseball's mind because they've had a team before, because they're a sports city with the hockey and the football and the soccer, and and it's one of the biggest and best cities in all of Canada. I think they're definitely in the conversation. Anytime they talk expansion or moving, you always hear the name Montreal. So I mean, as long as you're still hearing the word Montreal when the Major League Baseball is talking about this topic, then that means it's in their mind, and it could definitely happen.
On the other coast, on the other side of Canada, there's another pretty big city that could definitely, at least when you're talking about size, when you're talking about economic viability, could support a Major League Baseball team, and that is Vancouver. Baseball is popular in Vancouver. There are a lot of people who go from Vancouver down to Seattle Mariners games. Some of them are Mariners fans. Some of them are Blue Jays fans. I don't know how that would impact either of those two fan bases and how either of those two teams would feel about splitting up some of their fan bases. However, what do you think about Vancouver as a potential site? Obviously, you would like it, but do you think that that would be a viable place to have Major League Baseball because it's big enough, it has the money, it feels like baseball's popular enough there? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, British Columbia is just a hotbed for baseball. I mean, they have a little nicer weather than Ontario and Quebec. And I'm just comparing sort of the biggest provinces, Ontario, Quebec, BC are the biggest ones, and most baseball players on. All the other provinces have some great facilities and players. But I think BC, I mean, they've had the single A team there for forever. It was Oakland's single A team for several years, and now it's been the Blue Jays single A team for the last several years, and they've had a lot of success at Nat Valley Stadium, named after one of our Hall of Famers, which is kind of cool and unique. So we like to have that. And I think, again, yes, the size, yes, the geography, yes, the population could definitely hold a major league team. And they've proven, again, like single A to the big leagues is obviously a huge step in all kinds of facilities and facets. But again, they've proven they can run a pro team successfully for, I don't know how many decades it's been, but for a few decades, and they have the backing, and it'd be cool. I mean, they could be, the American League West or the National League West, get all the West Coast teams, and who knows how they would be sorted after, new teams come in or expansion happens. But, a great rivalry with Seattle, as we know, and it would be fantastic.
And I do think that at the beginning, Seattle, the Mariners organization, might have a problem with it. They would see the potential loss of fans. But a team like Seattle that has to travel so much more than every other team in Major League Baseball. I mean, as it stands right now, the Mariners are in the same division as the Astros. The Astros play like an hour and a half from Louisiana, and the Mariners play like an hour and a half from Canada. So you're looking at two teams who are so far apart and they're in the same division. I think for Seattle to have a team like Vancouver that would be a shorter travel destination that would presumably be in the same division as them would really help them economically for a while. Maybe it would hurt them a little bit with the fans, but I have to think that would help them there. As we get back to the Expos, and a big part of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame is preserving the memory of the Expos. How big of a deal was that documentary for your organization to sort of say to people, hey, like, remember the Expos and remember all these great players that we've had here? Rusty Stubb. Obviously, you mentioned Pedro and Vlad and some of the guys who were there, you know, for that big 1994 season. Did you find the Netflix documentary sort of infused some more excitement into the Expos memory?
It opened up a lot of questions. I mean, again, like how did that happen? Why did that happen? You know, like wish it didn't happen. All these things which you would expect from a documentary, right? Because I mean, it's 35 years of Expo history wrapped in an hour and a half. So it's you know, they got to be concise with their stories, which is good. You don't want it going too long. But you're right. I mean, the Expo history is just gigantic. I mean, you got Steve Rogers and Tim Raines and Andre Dawson and Larry Walker and Vladdy Guerrero, Pedro, Tim Raines, Tim Wallach, Jim Fanning. Like the list is huge, and they're on our walls in their Hall of Fame for a reason. Um, you know, Felipe Alou was the greatest manager ever in Expo history, and some people say in baseball. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, I mean, that documentary just sort of brought the Expos back to the forefront, back to the top, which is great. I mean, the Expos were the first team in Canada. I mean, they were 1969. The Jays didn't come to 1977. So it was, you know, the firsts are important and need to be remembered and preserved. And we really take pride in when we get our Expos artifacts donated, or you know, when Pedro Martinez gave us his Cy Young from his 1997 Cy Young when he played with the Expos, he donated that to us a couple of years ago, and that was just you know, amazing thing to have in Expos history, because again, he's the only guy to win a Cy Young with the Expos.
I mean, when Pedro won his only World Series of his career, the Red Sox broke the 86-year curse, and he's getting champagne poured over his head, and he's talking about the Expos and how Montreal is losing a team and how he's dedicating this World Series that he just won to Expos fans. You can tell that team, that city, played a huge part in his life and his career, and he was thinking about them in what was the biggest moment of his life.
Yeah, I mean, you win a World Series, which is hard to get there, let alone win one, and you don't think necessarily the first thing you think of is thanking your old team. You know, it was really special to Pedro. It meant a lot to the Expo fans. He was there not a long time. I mean, I think it was 4 years he pitched with the Expos, but he was all-star. He won Cy Young, like he was the best in the league and one of the best in Expos history after, you know, Steve Rogers and you know, so he's you know, he's right up there in Expo lore, and that was great to see. And he talks about the Expos, you know, other times as well. And so he obviously really enjoyed Montreal and his time there, and made a lot of friends there. And he's come back to Montreal to support events like Expo Fest, and he's done a nice job, you know, helping preserve the Expos like some other players.
We mentioned earlier this is your second time on the Irish Baseball Podcast. So anybody who didn't happen to hear that first time, Let's talk a little bit about the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame in our last few minutes here. Why don't you give everybody first an overview of what you do there?
Yeah, well, first of all, I mean, it's the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. We're in St. Mary's, Ontario, which, if you have no idea where that is, we're basically halfway between Toronto and Detroit. We're 2 hours west of Toronto and basically 2 hours east of Detroit in southern Ontario. We have a 32-acre site here. We have four baseball fields that get played about 1,000 events a year. So it's just jam-packed full of little kids that never played the game up to elite teenage baseball and then adult slow pitch and whatnot. So our site is extremely busy. We host tournaments and games and clinics and whatnot. And then inside the museum, we have a 3,500 square foot museum. Just we expanded it in 2018, so the expansion is still relatively new. And we have about 17,000 artifacts, not all on display, of course, but a lot online on our digital website. But you come in here, you can see things like Fergie Jenkins Cy Young Award. You can see the home plate that Joe Carter stepped on to win the 1993 World Series. You can see Babe Ruth's autographed bat, and many, many other items. We switch out the artifacts, some of the artifacts every year. So if you come this year, there'll be some new things for you to see next year.
We do a lot of work with the Irish American Baseball Society in trying to teach baseball in the Republic of Ireland, in Northern Ireland. We've had programs going for quite some time. We have coaches who go over from our organization and teach baseball either to gym teachers over in Ireland or to kids directly in Ireland. We have some experience of trying to teach baseball where baseball is definitely not the premier sport for most kids in the country. Now, baseball is much more popular in Canada right now than baseball is in Ireland. But do you find that it's easy to get kids who maybe are still hockey first to say, hey, it's the summer, why don't you work a different muscle group? I'm always a big proponent of kids playing multiple sports because I think that helps them stay healthy through all of the sports. Do you find that it's easy to get kids to pick up a bat, pick up a glove every once in a while, even if hockey still is that primary sport for them?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, we are in Canada. I mean, it's the number one sport, and that's just the way it is. I mean, baseball is definitely growing in popularity. Again, it helps with how the Blue Jays do. Sports does. I 100% agree with you about playing multiple sports. I mean, Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player ever from Canada, loved baseball. He's quoted several times, all the time, saying, I love baseball more than hockey, and when I could stop playing hockey, put my skates away, and play some baseball in the summertime, that was his real joy. His son got drafted by the Cubs. Wayne's son did several years ago, and so Wayne Gretzky, the greatest hockey player ever to play the NHL, says play multiple sports, and he loved baseball. That does a lot for us, and yeah, I mean, baseball is a game of failure. You get 3 hits out of 10, you're in the Hall of Fame, but that also means you failed 7 times, and your math test, you're getting in trouble for your parents if you fail, get 7 questions wrong. But so baseball is a hard sport. It's a slow sport. It takes a lot of concentration. Whereas the other sports like hockey, football, basketball, soccer, there's always constant movement, which helps keep the sports maybe more interested or more active. But baseball's concentration. Every pitch matters. Every pitch is detailed. You got to know where you're going before the pitch is thrown, what base, how fast the runner, how good's your arm, et cetera, et cetera. So it really takes a lot of concentration. And that's sometimes a struggle with kids is sometimes they'll get, they play a game and they get one ground ball in a game and the other hour they stand there and do nothing. But that's where practices come in. Practices are so important. Practices are more important than games in my mind with the younger kids. Because again, if you're having a practice, you can get in 25 swings or get 25 ground balls hit you or 25 fly balls hit you. Whereas a game, again, you might get one. So definitely playing baseball is picking up, and definitely playing multiple sports is the key for all kids.
One of the things that I really love about the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame is that you do have these facilities on property where you have kids playing. where you're promoting the game to the next generation. You go to the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown in upstate New York, and 90% of the people, it's a great experience, but 90% of the people walking through that door are paying the senior rate, right? To have your organization, your Hall of Fame, also be teaching the game to the next generation is something that is a great service. You're not just helping the older people remember their childhood. You are getting children interested in the game.
We are, and that's really key, and that's one of the reasons the Hall of Fame's in St. Mary's, because the St. Mary's Cement Company donated 32 acres of land to us, which allowed us to build the 4 amazing ball fields. We built, when we did the expansion in 2018, the one building we built a huge window. It's probably like 10 feet by 6 feet, and it looks directly at the ball field. Because so you can be in the museum where we love to preserve the history of the game and promote the history of the game, but as soon as you step out the doors, it's the future of the game. And you need those 2 aspects to work together. When we have teams come here to play, it's day at the Hall of Fame. Play your game because that's important. Get some lunch, we'll cook a barbecue for them. But then you're coming in the museum and learning some baseball history because they all need to work together. Kids need to learn history. It's important to learn the history of everything, but also it's important for us in baseball. And it's a really good connection to, you want them to play the game, but you also want them to learn some history.
Scott Crawford of the Canadian Baseball Hall of Fame. It's always great to have you on the show.
I'm always glad to be on it. I mean, this is my 2nd time. I hope the 3rd time's pretty soon so we can talk some more baseball.
I'm Rick Becker, and this has been episode 134 of the Irish Baseball Podcast.